So let's call the meeting to order at 6:03.
I'm going to try to jot down minutes. I can't promise anything, but.
Okay. I'm going to pull up the agenda because I neglected to do that in my rush to eat.
It's in the chat, Nikki. It's in the chat if you want
it. No, I got it. Okay, so are there any changes or additions to the agenda? The only real item for discussion we have is our budget, which is the primary thing we need to get done in January. Is there anything else? Okay.
I think we're good.
I'm not hearing anything. So I will take a motion to approve the minutes of, well, I'll take a motion to either approve the minutes of December 7th, 2021, or December 7th, 2021, and December 20th, 2021 combined. So somebody make a motion.
I'll move to approve the minutes of December 7th.
I'll second. Okay. So I think we have Colleen and then Sarah. I got that right? Okay. So is there any discussion on the minutes? I'm not hearing anything. Okay, so we'll vote on the minutes of December 7th. All those in favor of approving the minutes of December 7th, 2021, please, actually, I have to do a roll call. Let's do a roll call. Sarah, you're first.
Aye.
Okay, Colleen.
Aye.
Beth.
Aye.
Scott.
Aye.
Nikki. Aye. Okay. So minutes were approved 5-0. Okay. So now I will take a motion to approve the minutes of December 20th, 2021.
So moved.
Okay. Scott first and Beth second. Are you good, David? Oh, you're on mute, but that's okay.
No, I've got it. What the first ones were what date? The first minutes?
December 7th.
Okay, and then these are December 20th?
20th. And just to remind anybody listening, or the 20th was an emergency meeting to approve the negotiated contract. That's why we had two meetings in December. And it was a very short 20-minute meeting. So. Okay, so the motion has been moved and seconded for 20th. So is there any discussion there? Okay. And I guess only Beth, Scott, and I can approve them. So Sarah and Colleen will have to abstain. Yeah. So I'm just going to say that you guys are abstaining, and I'll do the roll call with the other three. Okay, Scott.
Aye.
Beth.
Aye.
Nikki. Aye. Okay. Good. We approved those 3-0 conditions. Somebody is still very jingle belly. Okay. Moving right along. Public participation. I see we have a bunch of public on the line. Is there anyone that has any comments not related to the agenda? Okay. So I'll keep going. Do we have any announcements? Besides Happy New Year, everybody. Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
Yeah, I've been meaning to put something on the listserv and I haven't, but I would just reiterate what I said at the last regular board meeting, that I'm not running for re-election. So just get that news out. Another here again to our Heartland School District. And so that's one seat for sure that, well, the board's going to need another person. So come on, Heartland.
I do know of one person that took out a petition or was planning on taking out a petition. Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Heartland's full of talented, able-bodied.
Good people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Very good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I think we're moving on to Christine's principal's report.
All right, it'll be super short tonight since we didn't have much school in between the last meeting and tonight's meeting. Let me just present Okay. Can everybody see it?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Except I can't. It's still loading. There we go. Okay. So we're already in January. Happy New Year. We just obviously came back from a nice break, and I think today was our first day back with staff, and we had an in-service. Angie and David and Patty led the strategic plan deep dive this morning, and allowed staff a chance to look at it and set a small action towards working, in alignment with the strategic plan. So it was a good day back, and staff had some time to do some things that they needed to do as well, which was much appreciated. So between our last meeting and this meeting, I just wanted to highlight our amazing student council under the direction of Jess Kiefer. She's their leader. They collected on their own. They wanted to do a food campaign, and they collected 561 pounds of food for the Upper Valley Haven and got to deliver it, which was a wonderful experience in community service for them. So I couldn't not share that with you. We're going to take a break from the IDL updates this month, but they'll be back next month. It's still happening, just haven't had a lot of time in between our meetings. So just a couple of things that are happening this month to make you aware. We're going to finish up our Tmp Winter Assessments hopefully this week. We had a lot of kids in quarantine or sick during the testing time before the break, so we're going to finish up this week. Same with our Panorama, which is our new SEL assessment. We're going to get a baseline. That's being done in SEL classes under the direction of Alyssa McDermott. And that's a 3rd through 8th grade assessment. That should be done this week, and we're looking forward to seeing what that data shows. The Leader in Me Lighthouse team continues to meet, and we have decided that for the rest of this year, we're gonna focus really heavily on just teaching the 7 habits, 1 a month. This month, we're gonna focus on the first one, which is being proactive, and we're under Lindsay's help. The staff is going to be doing a lot of positive promotion of kids and staff who are demonstrating that habit, and they'll be highlighted in the newsletter and with phone calls home and in some other ways in the morning messages at school. So we're excited to start that work. And just so you know, the boys basketball team, the middle level, and the drama club both start this month. I don't know if David will report on this, but we did have an athletic director meeting this afternoon to go over our COVID guidelines and protocols. And so I think we're all on the same page. We will not be allowing spectators at our 7-8 level games at this point, but we're going to continue to reevaluate as the month goes on. We are going to try to live stream the games though. So parents will hopefully it'll work and parents will be able to watch from home. Just quick on the hiring updates. We managed to hire 1 special ed support staff member before the break, which is an amazing feat in this hiring environment that we're in. We today interviewed a candidate for the BCA BA position. So we haven't hired that person yet, but we are in process for hopefully hiring someone for that position that's been open for quite some time. Haven't had any bites on the long-term sub for 5A PE and health. So if you know anybody that would like to sub for 6 weeks, that's a certified teacher. And I think honestly, the state is making some exceptions because we're so short-staffed. So maybe it's even a student in a program that could fill that role. So we're still down 3 special ed support staffs and that BCA BA position, which hopefully will get filled soon. Just so you know, and I'm sure you've heard that the COVID guidelines for quarantine have changed a bit. And I won't read them all here because I'm sure you're familiar, but these are the guidelines that we are going to follow as a school. We didn't change them. We thought it best to follow what's on the VDH website and what the AOE is telling us so that parents don't get confused and get angry. We are going to, I'll just scroll through because there's three slides of these. whether you're exposed and positive, or if you are, or just exposed. We are gonna up our masking guidelines at school. We're gonna make sure kids are masked inside and outside. Before this, they didn't have to wear their masks outside, but for at least for January, we're gonna ask them to wear them. Shouldn't be too terrible because they actually keep you warm when you're outside. And then we'll reevaluate. Oh no. Can you guys still hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can you see my screen? Because
Yes.
does it show my report?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry. It just kicked me to another place. Okay. And we're going to ask staff to make sure kids are distanced inside when they're eating, at least 3 feet. So those are things we've been trying to do, but we're going to really make a diligent effort. But those are the guidelines for your information. And I think, David, I think your report is next. That's the end of my report short. Are there any questions before I stop sharing? I think I got kicked out.
I can see you. You're here.
God, it's so weird. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay.
Bizarre. Okay, now it sounds normal. Any questions or comments before David's report?
We're having a lot of COVID positive activity at the kids' school. I'm assuming you guys are too. Do you have any special strategies around that, or how's it going?
Today, so we're not sure what we're in for. We've heard from a few staff and students, and today Annette worked on updating.
Oh, right. We haven't started yet.
Yeah, we haven't been back yet. But some parents have, and I heard that a lot of parents took advantage of the rapid tests that were given away.
That's great.
Yeah, which is wonderful. Annette was working on the vaccination lists today, making sure they're updated, making sure our test to stay lists are up to date, because that'll save us time if we have to, if we have to use test to stay. It's time consuming trying to track parents down in the heat of the moment to get that paperwork signed.
Yeah.
So she was working on that. We've done it with the classes that have had cases, they're pretty much up to date, but so we were working on that, and we're bracing for a rocky couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'm just hearing, every time I turn around, somebody else is tested positive in my life, as with grown-ups. It does feel like it's coming.
Well, I think there were 1 million cases in the United States yesterday, so I'm pretty sure it's coming. But you know what? We have good systems in place now, so we know what to do, and we have, everybody steps in and lends a hand, and we just get through it. So it's unfortunate.
Well, we're thinking about you. Yeah.
Thanks. Looks like Sarah had a question as well.
Everybody wash their hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been reading so much about the importance of good masks and quality masks, and it's funny, we traveled over the break, and just being in airports, and we were strapped into our N95s, and there was just such a variety of masking protocol on view, and it just really seems like that's an important thing. Is that something that the school board could help supporting the purchase of some more, better masks, so that if kids show up with masks that we don't think are going to help protect them and their teachers, that we could maybe, provide something better?
Yeah, I just actually was texting with Jim today, because at the beginning of the pandemic, the state provided KN95s, all staff, not students, but staff. And we had some last year delivered, but we're out of those. So I did ask him if he could check to see if there are any left in storage. I know we had quite a surplus at the beginning. So he's going to check and get back to me. And if we have them, we're going to distribute them, because they are from what I understand, better protection than a regular surgical or cloth mask. So if not, Sarah, yeah, I mean, maybe we consider purchasing some as a school district. I mean, they're consumable, obviously, but you can wear them multiple times before you have to get rid of them.
Yeah.
So
let us know.
Okay, we'll do. All right, David.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Yeah, so I'll try to share my screen. I hope the same thing doesn't happen to me here. But and Sarah, that's a good comment. I'm reasonably certain that middle school and high school would probably resist the N95s because they are a little bit, more cumbersome, a little less decorative and becoming of kids who are becoming young adults. But I think we can work on it and see, because I think that's it's a worthy suggestion. It's just that I'm still amazed that for the most part they wear their masks all day, and that's a pretty good thing when you get to it. I think it's why we haven't had the issues we've had, because kids are pretty good about it. So yeah, mine is pretty quick also. So let me just share my screen here. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, good. So here we are. It is 2022. Let's see what happens and what that brings us. Welcome back, everybody. I won't spend a lot of time on these because certainly Christine covered some of this too, but we did really want to thank the staff for their work this morning. And I thought it was a good gathering. I mean, I feel bad that it still has to be remote, but we had over 100 people online, and I thought Angie did a great job of organizing the presentation. I had a small part in it, but I think, it's finding that balance between dealing with the pandemic, dealing with everybody's stress, and still maintaining a little bit of productivity around the strategic plan. And that's going to be a real balance. And I think that we're trying to figure that out now. I think for the next month or two, we'll probably still suspend a little of the productivity. And I don't mean productivity in like school stops, but I mean, the emphasis on some things will drift a little bit while we just take care of people's social, emotional, and of course academic needs as we go forward. I hope everybody had a good break. It sounds like some people traveled, which was good. Budgets are coming up. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on. And we just got to be reminded, Nikki, I know you're on top of this, but we've the board. Usually, Nikki, I think you work with the board and try to put a little something together for the town, for the school report, right? So just keep that on your radar. COVID update, Christine covered a lot of this. A lot of families did pre-screen. We're working on our protocols. The good news is that we estimate now that about 60% of our student population throughout the SU is vaccinated presently. It probably at the high school level is closer to 70%, and at the middle school level, it's probably closer to 50%, but it balances out to about 60% overall. And of course, our elementary kids did have their second dose. I think most of them probably now could be considered, the ones who had the shot could be considered fully vaccinated. So that's good. Negotiations tomorrow. Teachers settled right before the holiday. That's why we had that special meeting. 3-year deal will feel good. The only problem with that is this year is the first year of that 3-year deal, but at least it gives us a 2-year extension, and we don't have to negotiate next year, which I think will give everybody a break. I think both the negotiating team for the boards and the teachers were getting a little bit tired and frustrated toward the end. It seems like we've done it every year for the last 3 years, so it'll be good to have a break. Support staff, the educational support paraprofessionals, the ESP negotiations have started. We went over ground rules and presented our proposals right before the holiday. We meet tomorrow night to continue. We're optimistic that we can try to get a long-term deal with the support staff as well. And we're trying to be fair and generous. We're very aware that in general throughout the state now, right, the minimum wage is going up, so we have to stay competitive to draw good people, and we want to keep people that we have. Equity Task Force is still alive and well. Right before the holidays, we met with Melissa Crum to review the action steps. We're going to meet again coming up here soon with the team, with the Anti-Racism Task Force team, and right now we're trying to I think I said this at the SU board meeting, but those who weren't at the SU board meeting, we have a possible partnership with Springfield for an equity audit to gather some baseline information on policies, protocols, and curriculum and instruction, and how it measures up against our emphasis on equity. If we don't have a baseline, we're not going to know with all this equity work whether or not we're making any progress. So that's the game plan. Budget update. That's our bulk of our meeting tonight. Christine and Ed have been working hard on those final numbers. We're going to look at those tonight. And the only other thing I'll say is the middle school task force. I don't have a slide for this, but the middle school task force is moving along, and we have met several times, and what's the next step is to meet with the middle schools of each individual school and see how those middle schools in each of the schools, given their grade structures, staffing patterns, are lining up with where we think we're going to end up for the general SU middle school recommendations, both in terms of the grade level span, the kinds of curriculum and assessment activities we want at that level, the kind of teaming and relationships that need to be built at that level. And it's a vibrant task force. It basically has every single middle level teacher, including a couple of specials, but every single middle level teacher in the SU is on that task force. So they've been working hard, and I think there's an openness to really just continuing to develop. Again, we're in the middle of a pandemic, so it's a little harder, but to develop a really engaging and vibrant middle school program throughout the SU. That's it for me, unless you have any questions.
Thank you, David. Okay, so I think we'll get on to our items for discussion. Christine, you want to bring that budget back up?
Yes. I hope it goes better this time. So I'm gonna share. Sorry, Scott, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Christine.
No, go ahead.
I remembered I spoke up at the SU meeting, but I just wanted to say how exciting that joint venture, if you could call it that, with the Springfield School District and the racial equity audit process sounds like a great way to step forward and really bring some information to the surface that could be, that administrators can really hold on to. And I'm not sure what the process even looks like, but perhaps there's a third party involved. And so, hopefully there is. So that would be, it would really bring some assurance to the community, and, again, bring some information to the surface that, in a way that doesn't point fingers, but informs and allows for action. And so I hadn't heard anything before the last SU meeting, and it's exciting. It's good stuff.
Yeah, and I'm meeting with Zach. Presented it to his board, and I'm meeting with Zach on Friday. First thing is to put a request for proposal together, because it is a third party vendor that we'll use. Scott, you're absolutely right. I think we need an outside audit. And I think the big thing with us, and I think the task force felt this way too, Nikki and Colleen, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we just want to make sure that we're solving the right problems. Sometimes you get so involved in the work and you're working hard, but you're not working, as somebody said, you might be doing the job right, but are you doing the right job? And that's really what we have to focus on. Yeah, so thanks for that, Scott. I'm excited about it too, and I think it's a good way to start this work after we get the action plan in place. It's in our strategic plan, so it'll all come together here. I think.
Thanks.
I'm just glad Angie doesn't have to report next. That's all.
I know. Did you see her? She's like sleeping.
She's out. She had a long day. Your mic is off, Angie.
She was just
my
resting.
camera was off. I was totally listening with my eyes shut.
Okay, that's what my wife tells me all the time too.
I was listening.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's good.
you looked cozy, Angie. It's all
You did.
good.
You looked very comfortable. I
Yeah,
just
as long as I wasn't, with my
you weren't
mouth
snoring, and your sound was off, so we don't know. You might have been snoring.
So I'm going to actually turn my camera off while I present. Maybe that will help. And then, so what I'm going to do, Ed and I have been working. We met last week. He called me, I don't know, it was like 4:30. He said, Christine, I have updated numbers. And I went, Ed, we can't do this. Presentation's done, but we got it together. So I'm going to share the same. I mean, it's an updated version of the presentation I've shared with you a couple of times with updated numbers. We know the salary increase and things like that. So it's completely updated. And then Ed is going to, so I'm going to go rather quickly because you've seen it before. And then Ed is going to jump in and talk about the tax rate and the yield and the CLA and all of that good stuff that he is an expert at. So let me share my screen. And okay, let me start at the beginning. Okay. All right, so just to refresh, our budget goal is to have alignment of the budget with our strategic plan, which you're very familiar with and have been a part in creating. Our continuous improvement plan, which also aligns with our strategic plan, and the education quality standards that we are guided by. And the three goals that we're really working towards: student success and engagement. That's a biggie. And that is embedded in a lot of the things that we're doing at school. One of those is the middle school model that David was just talking about. Leader in Me, co-teaching, our interdisciplinary approach, all of those things. Goal 2, culture and student wellness. Really trying to make sure our kids are, the whole child is addressed, not just the academics, but the social, emotional pieces that we all bring into schools. Also through our diversity and equity work, our restorative approaches that we're really working hard at making sure everybody is trained in and has finesse in administering. Our multi-tiered system of supports, which we've worked really hard on. Lindsay is our coordinator, and we're so pleased that we have an SU MTSS team so that we're all on the same page, sharing resources and ideas, which helps the process move along. Our mental health services, our schedule, which drives some of our culture and our wellness as well. And then information and communications. So really connecting with the community in multiple ways and making sure they feel a part of the school. So those are the driving goals. I don't think this slide has been updated since the SU budget passed. So I'm going to skip that one. I tried to check on that today, but I wasn't successful. So the wage line is up, as you can see. And it includes the music position going from a 0.8 to a full-time position, which we talked about. It includes the negotiated salary increase, and it includes the increase of the I think it was 0.45 intervention position to that full-time position that the 5-6 team discussed with the board at length at the last meeting in December. So those are the things that are included in that salary, in that wage line. Ed and I took out the 2 ESSER funded teaching positions because they're going to be funded through ESSER funds. So that's the wage line up a bit. The benefit line as well, the healthcare increase this year was 5.2%. And so Ed has done all the work to figure out what that's going to cost the district, about $45,000 more than the previous year. And that includes fully funded HRA, or he's budgeted for the full amount for HRAs to be funded by the district. Contracted services is up. This line includes our athletic reps, and you know, I assumed you might wonder why it's increased by roughly $40,000, and the reason for that is it includes a portion of our maintenance supervisor position that is not a Heartland position. It is an SU position that we benefit from, but we do pay a little bit of that position. And that's why contracted services is up a little bit. Maintenance and repair, this is doubled and a little bit more. And that includes the service line in the kitchen, which is an estimate of $25,000, that new service line. It includes the ski rentals. If we're going to go forward with our equity work in the winter activities program, it's $26,000 for ski rentals so that all kids can rent skis. And it includes the replacement of 4 sinks in 4 classrooms and the plumbing that goes under the floor. I think we talked about that last month. Those are starting to fail. So we want to get ahead of that. There are 8 of them. We are budgeting to replace 4 next year at $3,700 a piece, and then 4 in the following year, which is $14,800 this year and the same next year. So that's why that line is up. Transportation, as you know, is now funded at the SU level, but we do have some specific things in Heartland that we pay for in terms of transportation, which include field trips. We're hoping to get back to field trips next year. It includes that algebra bus that takes our algebra kids back from Windsor each day, athletics, math team, and we did budget an additional $8,500 for winter activities buses to bring kids home from the mountain. So that is a slight increase in that line. Communication, postage, insurance is just up a little bit based on rates. High school tuition. So this is the one Ed and I were adjusting today because he did get the tech FTE numbers came in today. So our high school tuition, of course, that number increased. So high school tuition, the total increase, including the tech FTE, is roughly $112,000 for next year.
And back to the, do
high school
we,
tuition.
yeah, do we have a good count of our private school and homeschool families that might be tuitioning?
We think we do. Lori and Linda have been taking extra care trying to figure that out. As I shared with you a couple months ago, it's really a challenging year because some kids that didn't go to school last year in the pandemic that were supposed to graduate are in those numbers. I haven't heard from Lori the final count, but it was at 55 graduating seniors for this year, which is above what we anticipated that it would be. And we were hoping to have an offset because we're sending fewer kids to high school, but that hasn't panned out just based on the move-ins and what I just described. So yeah, we are looking at those, Nikki, trying to make sure that we have an accurate count.
Yeah, I saw a list on something on the listserv today that made me wonder, like, how many people are moving to town just for that. So
yeah, people move to town just for high school choice. You know that. I mean,
Yep.
They specifically moved to Heartland for that benefit.
Yep.
So, but I heard on the news this morning, like the biggest moves in the country last year were Vermont was in the top 3 places where people moved. So I think in Heartland, some of the homes that were sold went to second homeowners or people that did not have children that came to our school, because as you know, our numbers are shrinking in the elementary school. Okay. Supplies is up a little bit. We're just trying to get back to where we were. We cut the supply budget over the last 2 years. So this includes some of that library stuff that we put on hold last year and the year before. And then our energy is up just a little bit. And that's just based on energy costs. And equipment. So I did find out the laminator is included in this line. So that's why this line is up a little bit. And the dues and fees line is up because that's where the ski lessons get coded in e-finance for roughly $20,000. That's what it would cost to send all our kids skiing. And then you know about the assessment. Many of you were at the SU board meeting, which has already been passed. So that number is not going to change. And that's the breakdown for Heartland portion of the assessment. And I think we did settle last month on the numbers that are shown for food services. Nikki, can you confirm that? I think we voted on that, right? Okay. So those numbers are accurate. Okay. And so that brings us to the total expenditure for the budget for FY23, which is up at $9,644,029. Ed has in this line, in this final budget, already applied the fund balance of $338,490. So that's already been applied, and we're still up $615,000. So I'm going to let Ed take over and explain the information on the yield and the CLA and the tax rate. So I'll stop sharing. Ed, you're still here? He was here.
Ed, we got you.
Yeah, edit. Well, I see Ed here. Yep.
He is here. Ed, you're up, Ed.
Might have gone to get.
Let me text him.
Might be a sound check, Ed.
Ed Connors, you're up.
Can you hear us, Ed? Turn the old.
I'm going to call him. Let me just turn my mic.
He might need to call in. Sometimes he has to call in. His microphone doesn't work real well.
Oh, he just joined.
Yeah, I think he's just called in. Ed, can you hear us?
Ed, you're muted on the phone.
Yeah, hit star. There you go. You
Hey,
got
we
it.
got him.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So why don't I start with
And Ed, you might want to turn your volume off on your computer.
okay.
Or your mic, rather. So you're just talking through the phone.
Okay.
That's better.
All right. So can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. Why is it that I can't do anything with it? All right, so what you're looking at here is what Christine just outlined. That is that the budget has increased by 6.82% or $615,325. Okay. Your education spending for equalized pupil has increased by 5.04%. Or $996.58. Now that would be important in a year, but they've suspended the penalty. But you would have been over the penalty. The penalty is $19,195. So your equalized pupil dropped the fully allowable 3.5%, which had an effect on your tax rate because the lower your equalized pupil, the higher your tax rate is. Your common level of appraisal went down by 10.3%, which again was significant when you're looking at the tax rate. That's due to the fact that prices increased, but there hasn't been an appraisal since the prices have increased. And I think everyone can agree that Heartland has seen a significant increase in their property values. So the homestead tax rate is up 4.5%, 4.05% or 7 cents. And to cut 1 cent would be $26,000. The non-homestead rate is up just a little less than 4 cents. So that's where you are. Now, one of the things that I was talking to Christine about was that we have been getting guidance from the state around, there's a $90 million surplus at the state ed fund right now. And what we do when we get to generate your tax rate is we need a property yield and an income yield. And that's generated by the Vermont Department of Taxes. And the department, the chair or the director of that sends out a tax letter. Well, the tax letter that he sent out had 2 scenarios. One of the scenarios was where you didn't use the $90 million in an ed fund surplus towards tax relief, and the other one was where you would. Okay? So what I just showed you is where it would be if they did not use the $90 million. Okay? If you were to take a look at if you take a look at this, these are the 2 tax scenarios. The one I just outlined is scenario B. And you can see these are the 2 numbers. This is your income, this is your property yield, and this is your income yield. So this is property. So when we use scenario B, we come up with a 7 cent increase in the tax rate. When we use scenario A, we come up with a 5 cent decrease in the tax rate. So are there any questions around that?
Ed, I had a quick question, just because we talked about it, just to let the board know. You're not anticipating the state make a determination on the 90 million in the next couple of weeks, or are you?
No, I think that this is going to go on for quite a while. And the reason being is that, as you guys are well aware, the Teachers Retirement Fund is underfunded by $600 million. So they could take that 90 million and apply it to there. Or they could decide at some point that they're not going to use the whole 90 million, they're going to use parts of the 90 million or a part of the 90 million. So unfortunately, what you guys would be approving tonight is an expenditure budget. And depending on how quickly they address these scenario A, scenario B, and potentially a scenario C, would mean that when you publish the, put everything into the town report, you could publish a tax rate that isn't accurate in the law. It could be significantly different. Now, this isn't something unusual. This has happened quite a bit in the last 3 or 4 years. By the time the legislature gets around to getting this stuff done, it's probably 2 months after town meeting. So you guys can select a scenario if you'd like. I've been given guidance at the state that most of my colleagues are saying they're going to use scenario B for obvious reasons. But there could be a change at some point.
At least we're
Christine.
admitting it this year.
Christine, this is more a question for you, just because with the three budgets being articulated at once, sometimes I forget. The positions that this year are being funded by ESSER, right? The ESSER money positions. Have you left those in ESSER, or have you included those in this budget? I think you're muted, Christine.
I am. Yeah, we took them out of this budget based
Okay.
on our last ESSER conversation.
Yeah, because I was going to say it's looking pretty good with,
Yeah.
that most of those positions are going to stay in. So they're not in there now.
They are not. We took them out.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at it and I go through it, it's not that we've added a ton to the budget. I mean, we've added we've made the 0.8 music position a full-time, and we've increased that interventionist position to a full-time teaching position. When you just kind of go through quickly and look at, their salary increases, it adds up. $100,000 here, the assessment, $150,000 there, high school tuition, $112,000. I mean, it adds up quickly to what you get here, but it's not that we're really adding a ton to the budget. The ski program is about $50,000 to fund that in this budget. Is roughly plus the busing is a little bit more. So we did add that.
Yeah. No, that's true. The only thing that I would say as superintendent, and again, I don't live in Heartland. You all have to defend this budget, and Nikki and Christine have done a good job defending it at town meeting. I mean, the only thing I would say is if there was a year to not cut and undercut your services next year, we thought this was going to be the recovery year. I think next year is going to be the recovery, and or the next couple of years will be our recovery years. And I think that's why we have ESSER, and we've used it as best we can. And I also think it's why, as you beef up things like your middle school program and some of your intervention work, you need those positions. I do agree with Ed that the state has moved slowly in terms of making some of these decisions and determinations. But I think in the end they do, and I think they're very aware of what's going on in the field right now. And you'd like to stay optimistic if you could, and maybe by the time we get to town meeting, we'll be able to give a little bit of a different story than a 7-cent tax increase. But that said, a lot of what's also driving this, and Ed mentioned it, and we're finding it in all three of our towns, that our properties are very undervalued right now. So that common level of appraisal. Matter of fact, Ed, you and I have looked at this before. If you change that common level of appraisal by a tenth of a point, and it goes from 92 to 93 or 94, that you cannot imagine the impact that has on your tax rate. So I just think it is the way it is. And I think, again, I don't live in the town, but I think the town will understand that houses aren't selling for what they're on the tax rolls for. The grand list is not reflective of the value of those houses right now. And it's probably, once this dust settles, time for a reappraisal.
I would just add that we recently did have an appraisal. We're not far from one. And I think it's too strong to say that the properties are undervalued. There's a global pandemic at foot, and it has these strange effects, and the property tax system is full of measures like this that the mechanisms don't work when there's such an acceleration in value. So that kind of acceleration in value. So I think we can trust that the legislature and our community understands that, and we're going to get some help. But I think it's just too strong to say that our properties are undervalued. I just wouldn't agree with that, David.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what I meant by that, right, Scott? That basically what's on the tax roll. In other words, I just sold a single family house in St. Johnsbury, very depressed area. It's on the tax rolls for like 80, 90,000. I got 145,000 for that house. You see what I'm saying? It's not that what's on the tax bill in the town is not what the houses are valued at. And I bet you if you went to town hall today, pick 3 properties that just sold, you'd find that they're selling for way more than they're estimated for, right?
I agree with you. The point I'm making is that not everyone is looking to sell their house. I mean,
oh, I see. Yeah, yeah.
And that we have had a recent appraisal, and so no one saw this situation coming.
Yeah.
And,
the bigger picture is that I think statewide property values are all up, and so I'm suspecting, and maybe Ed knows what the other communities' property values are, but I suspect that everybody's
that's true.
below 100. I don't think anybody's at 100 right now because they would have had to have appraised in the middle of the pandemic.
But Nikki, I think what happened in some of the other communities, right? You take places like Shelburne and Killen. I mean, those properties were always high, right? And they didn't go that much higher, right? But I think the attractiveness of a town like Heartland, with again with high school choice and the pandemic, I think it really and the same thing with the Northeast Kingdom, a very depressed area, where I live. But people wanted to get out of cosmopolitan, and I think some people are even looking at places like Burlington city, but not Heartland. You know what I mean? I think you're an attractive place to live, and I think your values are showing that. It's not a bad thing, especially if you want to sell your house, but it's a good thing. And I agree with Scott. I think the town will understand it. And Scott, I think you're right. It might be temporary, or it might level itself out. I don't know, but it certainly has impacted right now.
So I have a question to either Ed or Christine. Can you send us the spreadsheet? Or Ed, it's in Excel, I guess.
Yeah, I can do whatever you want. What do you need?
Well, I just I don't know. I think visually, and so not being in control is killing me. Not being able to look at things on my own screen is affecting my ability to think. But Christine, do you have it in a Google Doc or no? Probably not.
I have it in a working doc, so Ed and I will have to. It's got our notes and things in it.
Yeah, I don't want that. I was just wondering if there was something quick that you could send us. But so I throw that out there. I want to hear from board members on what people are thinking. Beth has her hand raised.
Quick question. The music rentals and things like that, is that still in there too, along with all the ski stuff?
No, we didn't put the rentals in. We just increased the position based on Jamie's presentation of giving kids opportunities to try different instruments at the lower levels and build their interest in music, instead of waiting and then basically having them experiment at an upper level and having to purchase instruments that way. So no, they're not in here, Beth. We did some of that supply budget is increased because we're going to need some more guitars and we're going to need some more ukuleles. As you heard, we lost a few in the pandemic because we sent some home or they need repair. So we'll that is in the supply line, but not rentals.
Any other thoughts out there?
What was the name of that tranche of money that the 90 million at the, or the 600 million? Is that what the amount at the state level?
The 600 million is what is missing in the teacher retirement system.
Oh, yes.
And the 90 million is what the state has and could put towards the tax rate or towards that hole in the retirement system, or both.
Sarah, go ahead.
But what's the name of that, Christine?
Sorry.
The ed fund or the 90 million?
Yeah.
I think that's federal money that we got,
Yeah,
from the
that's
from the
what I
pandemic.
thought.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
wasn't, it's not ESSER, like we're.
No. Ed, do you know, Ed, off the top of your head?
The 90
I
million.
think it's the basis. I think it's because they raised more money in the other pieces of the ed fund, whereas they adjusted because they thought they weren't going to get as much in sales tax, they weren't going to get as much in rooms and meals,
Okay.
and they got much more than they thought they were going to get.
Okay. So it's in our state system. Okay. Thank you.
Sarah?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I'm just sort of putting this out there because I think it's probably the next thing for us to talk about. Is the ski program, sort of the best use of what sounds like $60,000, and is that I certainly within the context of having a winter sports program, having it paid for everybody extends equity. But I guess perhaps we should talk about whether, is that the best place to use $60,000 to increase equity school wide? And I'm really torn because I love the idea. I think it's great to open up that sport to all kids. But I think we probably should talk about the fact that we could, for significantly less money, have a winter hiking program, or even probably a cross country skiing program, or a snowshoeing program, or something that might get some of the same results. So I'm torn. I'm just laying it out there so we can talk about it.
Beth?
Yeah, feeling similar, but I mean, I guess I just want to kind of review of like our options for cutting seem very, very minimal, and just making sure I'm clear on this. And so we're really talking about the music position and then the full-time interventionist, and that was going from half-time to full-time, right?
Correct. That's correct.
So it's really just like an increase of less than one position. If you combine those increases from last year. And then we're talking about skiing.
And we're talking, and the service line in the kitchen, and the things I think we have to fix. We don't have to fix 4. We could fix 2. We could stretch it longer. It's not that big of a savings, but we could.
And I would say,
go ahead.
Okay, so is that? I mean, I feel like that's kind of that's our bucket to play with. And that's really it, right? I heard that right.
Yes.
Yeah, and it just seems like with the service line too, and I would say I'm the first one to say, like, good God, yes, you need a new kitchen. But I will say there's federal funds right now for a grant for up to $15,000 for food service equipment through the USDA. So, with that whole thing, do we like cut it, keep our fingers crossed, go for that grant? And say at least, or put in 10 instead of the 26 or whatever for that. But then is it worth that nickel and diming it? Or do you just put it in the budget and say, well, if we get the grant, then great, we won't spend that money. And it's the same thing with the ski program. My guess, it's not going to be 60,000 because not everyone's going to do it. And so then all of a sudden it's 30,000 and we're like, oh, well, yeah, we should do it. So I'm feeling really torn around that. And I also think too, if this whole idea of it doing 100% free, what are the other cuts we could take? Because it wasn't just skiing that was offered that you had to pay for. There was skating, there was cross country, I think there was artistry, programming. So it was a whole suite of things that we were paying for. So are we talking that this money would only be going to skiing and that's all we would be offering for everybody? Or those kids that are like, I hate skiing and all I want to do is art, that we won't pay for them to go to artistry then? So I think what's equitable there?
I think we budgeted for everyone skiing, knowing that some kids would choose other options and there would be enough money there for that. The skiing is the most expensive winter activity that we have. So yeah, it could be less for sure. I don't think every kid in our school is going to ski. but I think probably more than the number that Ski Now would ski if they didn't have to pay for it. At least they would try it.
Absolutely.
No, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ed, I have a logistical question for you. As far as, and I know it doesn't matter as much this year, so, but as far as things like the service line, if we talked about this the last meeting and you weren't there, if we were to fund the service line out of the capital reserve account, does that get applied to our per pupil costs? Does that make sense?
No, it doesn't.
So when we're paying for, so it's kind of frustrating. So when we're paying for building upgrades, our per pupil costs go up because we're paying for building upgrades, when if we paid for them out of the capital reserve, then our per pupil costs would look lower.
Yeah. That's just the way it works. I'm sorry.
No, that I think it's important that we understand that, because, I mean, people in the community do look at our per pupil costs, and I don't think that the service line or the sinks and plumbing are so huge that they're going to dramatically decrease our per pupil costs, but they may have some impact. And
well, they would take a penny off the rate, right? I'm using the wrong word, but every $26,500, I mean, Ed and I played with it. Every $26,500 drops the tax a penny.
Right. So taking those two things out would get us a penny and a half.
Yes, that's correct. Ed, can you confirm? Can you confirm that?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It's 26,000 though. It's not 26,500.
26.
Those are the changes
Okay.
that I made.
Okay.
Okay, so 26,000 gives us a penny.
Mhm.
And so what I'm just trying to think, and then what was our surplus from last year? What are we applying? 300 something?
338.
338.
490. 338, 490.
Okay, so that was our surplus.
Yep.
Okay, and so we're using, I'm just trying to do this smart. Like, we're using our surplus to pay down our increase this year. But would we be smarter to deposit $50,000 to $100,000 into the capital reserve and then pull out $50,000 to $100,000 capital reserve? Or is that a wash?
Well, if you lower your expenditure budget, you're going to have a parallel lowering of your revenue budget. So I would say if you're going to do that, I'd pull it out and put it in capital reserve and leave the surplus in there. Then you'll see a decrease in the tax rate. But if the other way around, if you lower the amount of money that you're going to use as an offsetting revenue and you lower the wash.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure that I was thinking of it correctly. How much do we have in the capital reserve?
1 second.
300 something, 360 maybe.
Okay.
Ed will check.
$368,192.62.
Okay.
I mean, it might make sense to pull that money out. You know, what do you think is the What do you think that the taxpayers will tolerate?
Well, so here's my thought process on that is that if we pull, like in thinking what Beth is talking about, as far as the sinks and the service line go, if we can get a grant, like we get approved to pull out 25 grand for the service line, but then if we can get a grant for 15 of it, then we're not charging a property tax rate that's, I don't want to say it's artificially high because we don't know if we can get the grant or not, but do you see where I'm going on that one?
Yeah, and if you get the grant, you just don't use the amount you pulled out of the capital reserve account.
Yeah, you're already approved to pull what you need.
Right.
If you need less, then yay.
Yeah. That makes sense. It has to be written as a separate article, which we can do.
Yep.
I don't think it's too late.
No, it's not too late. Yeah.
I would agree with Nikki. That seems appropriate.
Okay.
So wouldn't you pull both of those things out? The sinks and the, and if you're going to do that, does it make sense to pull out enough to do all 8 sinks?
That's why I had my hand raised. That seems the expenses per job there didn't sound that significant, and I didn't want to act like I know what kind of work that's going to take. My question was, our building and grounds chief, Jim, does he have a recommendation on the timing, and how concerned is he? That's what I didn't understand.
He thinks that, I think maintenance is going to be doing part of that work, which is the question I asked him. Do you think you can get to all 8 in one summer? And he was relatively optimistic about that. But when I said, what if we do less, and spread it out, he seemed more optimistic about that option. It involves moving the lines. They're under, I don't know who did the design, but the lines are under a concrete pad. So when they break, you have to rip up concrete. So they're going to reroute the lines into the wall, move those. I don't know if you've been in the school in a while, but the old part of the building has those little counters and sinks kind of in the mid on one side of the room. So those are going to come out, and the sink will just be mounted on the wall, which will, add a little space in the room. And the lines will be easily accessible that way. So he might be able to get it all done, Scott, in one summer if he knew he had to do it.
Well, I don't want to tell him what or how to do his job. I just wanted to make sure he had enough funds, and I agree with Nikki that that should, in my mind, it should come out of the capital fund, and we should ask the community for that.
So then the next question, if we look at the, I'm thinking along Beth's lines of the ski program. I don't want to budget for a full program that we don't think is going to be used. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I don't know, like, do we budget for 75% utilization? I don't know how to adjust that. So I throw that out there, and then Sarah, you're up next.
Yeah, I was sort of thinking along the same lines that, could we survey families and get a sense of, if the ski program were paid for, how many people would be doing it? We might get obviously we're not going to get it for tonight, but I don't know how. We may just not have the time to do that at this point, but that could help. And then, the other thing, just thinking a little bit outside the box, that, if the goal of the winter activity program is to get kids outdoors, as we talked about at the last meeting, really, make them enthusiastic Vermonters. And, if these are really our goals, are there other ways to do it? Would a winter nature walk, or winter, snowshoeing or tracking or something that we could do in the 17-acre wood, or, in town, get us the same result? And I would hate to not do the ski program, but I think it really is worth just thinking a little bit about that.
Thank you, Ed. Sarah, I'm thinking I'm going to call on Colleen and see what she has to say.
I think you could budget for half the amount of money and hopefully and count on people to leverage their own equipment for people that do have it, and people that are not going to want to ski, even if they never did ski, they still won't ski. I mean, I don't think we're going to be serving the whole school. And if we're wrong about that, we can adjust on the fly, I guess. I mean, and then deal with it in the next budget. I think we'd be safe with half. I know that Hartford is doing kind of the same thing. That's my new experience is Hartford, and that a lot of people are use their own equipment. I mean, I think they have it kind of set up that way that they have stuff if people don't have it. But kids are using their own stuff some too. I mean, I know people don't. We never purchased equipment. We rented equipment for our kids because they were growing. It didn't make sense to. So I don't know who actually has equipment, but it seems like there's a ton of it out there and it passes around. So
oh, sorry, Colleen.
I'm just that. I think a conversation with the community to say, please use equipment, and then for people that don't have it, we can help. We can add. We'll make sure it works for him. I suspect we're not going to use that whole amount.
Beth?
Yeah, I mean, we also have to think though too, if we are going to offer Nordic, are we going to offer skating? Are we going to offer art? And so, will we pay for those as well? And if we do, then I think it probably would be more than half. And so we have to kind of figure that in place. And as much as Sarah, I totally understand. I would much rather go tracking and snowshoeing and wandering around the woods for days versus downhill skiing. I mean, I like downhill skiing, but it's not my number one thing. But I do see it. It's not the same, and people that are truly love it, and it's part of their thing, it is pretty amazing when you see those kids really clicked in on it. And I just know, for me growing up, it did become I just remember we did the ski program, and then all of a sudden it was oh, the ski program, now we have to pay for it. And it was we can't do it anymore. And so then it became, I totally remember this as a kid of oh, well, only the rich kids go skiing. And it hit me in the face, and I'm just yeah, I guess it's just the rich kid thing. And so how can we stem that as much as possible? As well as Colleen, you were saying about equipment and stuff. I just know the kids notice real fast of who has the coolest equipment. But if we can just keep it as get the rentals, everyone. I mean, we buy equipment for our kids at Listen for $20, and it works. So it's so there's so many other alternatives to really kind of push down the high expensive skiing persona that I think we can also work on as well, because borrowed ski pants, Listen skis, and a decent helmet get you down the hill.
Mm-hmm.
One of my other concerns with the ski program, with the rental program, is that now if the school pays for the rentals, we're kind of on the hook for the rentals, And I talked to a family today whose rental skis were stolen 3 hours after they rented them. And now they don't have skis for the season. So I just is something that comes to mind. I don't know how we deal with that. Are we going to keep all of the skis that we rent? Because we can't get ukuleles back. We can't, like, how do we manage that side of things? And we're not there. But it's something that really concerns me because I don't want to be chasing down. I don't think it's a teacher's job to chase down people for skiing. Beth?
Yeah, totally agree. I think that would be like madness. And I don't think we want to keep, I just imagining like the poor maintenance guy with 100 pairs of skis and trying to figure out where to put them. Like that sounds like hellacious. But I think it can be worked out with like whatever, it's going to be a huge score for whatever company gets the contract basically. And so I think it would have to be an agreement of like students or families will sign waivers or whatever liability contract around it. And we'll do our best. And, but I think it's also like that company is going to have to take some risk because they're going to make some money too. So maybe they're, whoever we can work with has that understanding.
Christine?
I just shut my microphone off. I agree with you. I think we can do it for half. And if we overspend the line, we'll have the data for next year. I think maybe we go with the cost of the program. And if a family needs rentals, I work with John and Henderson's. I know that they help families out as a start so that we don't have to think about that liability piece of the equipment. We're going to keep it. That sounds like a nightmare to me as well. And if there are families that need skis, we can work on that on the school end, if that makes sense.
I think one of the other thoughts that I have in mind is that we can advertise to our community that we are trying to make it so that everybody can ski for free. And maybe we ask, if you are a family that can afford, can you subsidize your own children? And that will help subsidize other kids. Because I would think that a lot of our families that would, but we don't ask them to, they don't have to.
Maybe they donate.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of asking them to pay, because I just go back to what Beth said. You know who's paying and who's not paying. It's easy to figure that out. Kids are pretty bright, but if we had just a ski program donation, Ed will love that, right, Ed? Is that okay? I don't. If he says nothing,
sounds good to me. Sounds fine. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I would. I mean, the way I would see that working is saying, it costs this much for each child to ski. Consider donating, and see if we can really encourage families to help other families. I think Sarah's first.
I think there are people in town who would donate as well, who don't have kids at the school. So if that's, if that's kosher with regard to the budget, I think we could even put out a plea, put it out on the listserv and ask people in town, explain what we're trying to do. And I think there would be support for that.
I agree. Beth?
Yeah, totally agree. And I think, has anyone talked to John at the rec, like, of this grand scheme? And I'm assuming he's probably for it. But I was thinking, it also could be something that John in the rec is the one that's doing all the equipment stuff, and they would be fundraising or something like that instead, because they're the ones that usually finagle it's usually through the rec with the skiing. So I don't know if it's something, I don't want to say we hoisted on John, but is there some way, to try to, spread that burden in some way as well?
Yeah, Johnson,
our Heartland winter trails are amazing, like when we have snow. And so just even having the access of kids that don't want to do downhill, but we have cross-country ski access, even if it's rentals somewhere or borrowing equipment to get kids out skiing on the trails, just locally would be pretty awesome.
I completely agree. Okay, so I'm going to summarize where I think this conversation maybe went, and you guys can tell me if I'm wrong. My summary of this conversation is to half the ski program and ask for donations. And just get head nods as to who's thinking. Scott, I'm not seeing anything.
Yeah, I think it's not a big deal. You guys know me by now. I don't really like this donation part because it seems to be a stepping away from our job to create sustainable systems. But there's always, when I talk to school board people at the statewide level, there's always donations at the school district in all different forms, and it's kind of hard to get away from. So I just wish that there was some other way to get there, but I'll say yes tonight.
I think that this is a stepping stone. I guess is the way I see it, is that I do think that in some ways we should continue to ask people to help, because people that can help more should, and people who need more help should get more help. But I think this way we have a program for all and can now suddenly see what we can actually do. So to me, that's exciting. And then if we completely miss it, we'll fix it next year, make it sustainable. So, okay, Ed, I'm also curious what our per pupil rate is in this scenario with the.
Well, can I ask a couple of clarifying questions?
Yeah.
The ski program in total was $47,500. There were three components to that $47,500. There was $26,000 for rentals, $2,000 for staff tickets, and $19,500 for lessons and lift tickets. And how the rental equipment was calculated was 100 people or 100 students times 260, which is $26,000. And then the lessons and lift tickets were $75 times 260. So when you say you want to cut the budget in half, would you just want me to cut the $47,500 in by half? Or do you want to pick out how much of these three elements that you want to reduce?
There's also some money in the travel line too for busing.
Okay.
I would just keep.
I don't think the busing would change. That's the thing. I think the busing would be the same no matter how many students you had. But that's up to you.
We included a bus back to school, Ed, in that, so that we normally just bus one way. That includes busing both ways. So it's probably double what it normally is.
I would still keep it there. I think if we're going to do this, we want to go both ways. So can you run those numbers again? We had 100 times 265. So is that 265 students, or is that 100 students?
It's $100 for the fee, and we estimated 260. I think we started the year around that number.
Okay, so with that, and then the second number, what was that?
75 times 260.
And what is the 75?
That's the lesson fee. The rentals, I think, were 100. The lesson fee was 75.
Okay, and do we have to get tickets? Oh, thank you. Okay.
And staff tickets, yeah.
No.
And then I can add this. This is insert. This is the bus.
Do we try to do Mount Ascutney? I mean, have we looked at lower cost Mount Escutney?
No, because it's owned by the
possibility.
it's owned by the town. I don't think that we could have lessons
Well,
there.
West
honestly,
Windsor does it. West Windsor does
Yeah.
it, and they have rentals there too. So it is it's owned by Ascutney Outdoors, or run by Ascutney Outdoors, and it's very affordable. And they do Mount Ascutney or West Windsor, and I think Windsor do it there too.
I don't think they make snow. So I think
No,
it's
I know they don't make
it's
snow.
a lot
They
variable.
do not make snow.
They don't make snow, and I mean,
it's
Would they
run by
open-
it's volunteer run.
yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Would they open another day for a different school? Like, it's
be a
their
whole-
community, so they're opening for their community.
hmm
But I mean, I like the idea. I just don't know that it's there.
I also think the older kids, I mean, already some of the older kids, grumble a little bit about Suicide 6 not having enough runs. And I think to keep the enthusiasm of all kids, Suicide 6 might be better.
So Ed, to answer your question, I would half the rentals, I would half the dues and fees.
Nikki, does it make sense to just get rid of the rentals if we're going to really try to have people bring their own equipment and then work with the rec on getting the rest of the equipment? I don't know if it matters.
I think if we're going to give this a shot, so there's like liability issues to skis, and we don't
Yeah.
want to own any of that. And so if we're going to give people equipment, I want to give people equipment that has no liability attached to us.
So out of the budget, the rentals out of, yeah.
Wait, no, I would keep the rentals in the budget because I don't want the rec picking up skis and handing them to kids and saying, these are
Oh,
great.
gotcha.
I want the
Got it.
family to have to sign a liability contract with the rental company. And
Okay, that makes sense.
I'm just watching what Ed's doing.
That's a good point, Nikki. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. I mean, just what, like, I forgot boots one day at the mountain, and they wouldn't rent boots because it would invalidate their liability of them renting me boots to go into our ancient skis, because we do like Beth does and just scrounge around for whatever we can find. And they were like, nope, we're not touching those. So yeah. Okay, so we went from 56 to, oh wait, no, we're not there yet. I think you were going to half the dues and fees too.
You want to go half here?
Yeah.
We could also just lop off 25,000 to save a penny and call it.
Well, the problem with that is that I have to put it into the budget and budget lines. You know what I mean?
Right, but you could like lop 10 off one and 15 off the other.
That's, yeah. You could do whatever you want, actually. I mean, you want to cut it by,
As long as that end result is half, I guess, or close to half, you're good. I like the way, I like the way Ed's tracking it though. That way it is tracked. We know, at least we know for posterior where we landed. So where did that put our tax rate then? It put, I guess Ed's working on it now.
I think if we come in close to half of the ski budget, it was
goes to about 4 penny, a little over 4 penny.
4.6 pennies.
Yeah.
Which does feel
A little more saleable.
yeah. I just I want to see where we are with the per pupil. Like, I don't want to put us in a position where we suddenly have to cut like a ton of things in order to not get penalized when the state suddenly decides they're going to penalize again. Do you guys know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you know, if we're way, way, way above, and I'm already concerned about that because we already have 2 ESSER positions, we have 2 teachers that we're not even paying for right now.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, we probably also have the Title I positions. And so we're in a recovery year where these kids need more help than we can possibly give them. And then I'm afraid that we're still going to need to be recovering and everybody's going to be like, oh, out of money. And we're suddenly going to be like in a position where we have 4 unfunded teachers. So I throw that out there. Not that I'm looking to cut anything right now. It just scares me.
We should have Christine tell us more about those teaching positions, because it was my understanding as your board committee person on that recovery plan that those all the administrators know that those teaching positions are going away over the course of this and 2 or 3 more years. So,
that is accurate, Scott.
Yeah.
We planned for 3 years, thinking that would get us through the recovery. And prior to the recovery, we were going to combine classes, as you recall, and have multi-grades in different in elementary and middle. But I talked without raising my hand. Angie has her hand up, so I think she wants to talk.
Go, Angie.
I was just going to say, yeah, those positions were filled with the understanding the employees know that those were 3-year positions, and they, you know, if our ESSER 2 plan gets passed, I mean, we anticipate that the supports that we put in place across the supervisory union with extra staff would continue to be honored by the SU board. I just wanted to say too that the title funds are precarious. We have carryover this year that helps us to fund those 2 full-time positions. It's so dependent upon the, you know, the experience of the staff person that you get in, because it's not the same bucket of money every year from year to year. That's a little stressful too, in terms of us making sure that we can plan to fully fund those positions. The tricky thing with title funds is that, so for example, say you can only fund 1.8 one year, and then you put in 2.2 locally. That means next year, even if you have the funds, you can't fund that 0.2 with title funds because it's considered supplanting. So that title, I think you're right to be aware of those 2 positions being title funded. Heartland has typically had over my 5 years or 4.5 years with it, we've funded 1 position quite easily, and that second position's always been a little bit like we did it this year, and I think we'll be able to do it again next year. But again, it's not always a given.
And so I know we've talked about it, that the ESSER positions expire, but that doesn't mean that our kids' needs are gonna expire, and that's what's freaking me out. So I throw that out there. But so Ed is furiously working to change things as quickly as possible. How are you doing, Ed?
This is it right here.
Okay. Awesome. You are good. Okay. And what is our equalized pupil cost? Did we bring that down at all? Probably not. You probably have to do a ton of different calculations in order to get there.
Well, the problem I'm having is I can't. Let's see. Equalized pupil with those cuts, it goes to 2628.80. And this is 95.81, 429. So the cuts made it go from a $615,000 increase to a $552,000 increase. And this brought this down by about 230.
To me, that's not insignificant. I mean, we're less than 1,000 different from what the state thinks we should be doing. I would still argue that I have no idea how the state thinks we can do that, but okay. So what else, guys? Girls?
So can I just make clear here? So you guys are talking about cutting. You're taking the 39,800 out, which is the total of the service lines and the water lines. You're taking that out of the general fund, and then you're taking the budget cuts that we outlined here, right? So
yes.
These are the new budget. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
All right. I just want to make sure I understand.
Yep.
That's where we are so far. Yep.
I had a thought and it went away. Anybody else have any thoughts?
No, the only thing I would say, Nikki, sorry, I don't know who wanted to speak there, but and I know Christine said this, but we have to remember all those fixed cost increases, right? We finished a negotiated agreement now that increased salary really over 2 years, because it increased this year, then it's a percentage on top of that for next year. And then benefits were up, I think, in the 5% range. And things that are obvious to people, energy costs, are going up, and, all those things that are just part of this inflation rate that seems to be creeping up. So, I mean, again, I know you're really trying to beat yourself up to find the 20, 30, 40, 50,000, but, keep in mind that I think certainly anything under a 5% increase, I think is pretty darn good.
I just want to say that for the record, I think energy costs without the laminator are going to go down. Because right now we're using a laminator to heat a room. Sorry. Beth, you had your hand raised. Are you down again?
I did, but I think it fell out. Oh, good.
Okay. So are we ready to, do you have something now, Beth?
It came back.
It all coming back. No, it's just a question around process. Like, is this it? Like, are we actually voting on this? Like, what's happening next? Like, what's the process? Because I don't always remember it from year to year.
That's a great question. Go ahead, Nikki.
The process would be that we do approve this as soon as possible. Given the changes we've made, I would lean on Ed to make sure that we're ready. I don't feel like we have the language entirely down of what we need to approve right now. I'm looking at David and Christine and Ed. I'm wondering if, like, we need to do this now. The question is are we ready, or should we do a 20-minute emergency meeting next week just to vote on the official language?
Well, unless you plan on cutting more, I mean, I think Christine and Ed would know now what the bottom line, because all you have to do tonight is somebody has to make a motion to approve an expenditure budget for FY 22-23 in the amount of bang. Then you put the amount in there, and I think Ed, with those cuts, would have that amount right now, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, I'm not trying to avoid an emergency meeting, but I think you have everything you need to know, unless you want to cut further.
And
Do
then,
do we also need to vote on the capital expenditure? Yeah.
Well, actually, you'd vote. Yeah, I guess you could do that. I mean, it's going to be a warning. Certainly, the townspeople have to vote, but I think you would vote to have a separate article warning the water lines and the. But I'd take your expenditure budget first, get that done, and then we can move to the capital budget.
so I can't remember, do we ever have to vote on the warnings, or just because we sign off on the warnings, that's all of our agreement?
No, because once you've got the budget approved and you know you're going to move that into the capital improvement, then you just sign the warning.
Ed, what did you have to say?
As far as I'm concerned, you could vote on it. The language would be something that David works on after the fact, really.
Yeah, I'll work on the warning language. You just have to move to put those two items into capital improvement, and then we'll work on the warning for the townsfolk. So you're the only district we know, we go through this all the time, that has to have your town approve your capital improvement. And we tried to. I remember one year we tried to mess with that, and I don't think people were ready to mess with it yet.
Yeah.
5, 8, 3, 4, 9.
Okay, so we've done the changes that I personally think are the right thing. The only thing that I'm hesitating on this year, and I guess this is, can't guess what's going to happen in the future.
85, 84, 3, 4,
We don't have a penalty this year for excess spending, and we have a surplus where we could put additional money into the capital reserve. I don't know. I feel I'm throwing that out there. I feel like what we just did is right, but I also feel like it could burn us in the future. I feel like bringing the taxes down as much as we can is the right thing to do. But I'm worried about how we compare on the per pupil spending and to what the state thinks that we can educate. And maybe they'll finally decide that rural areas cost more to educate in, but I'm worried. And so that's where I'm leaving that for thought. Colleen?
I understand that. I think I think we feel some uncertainty about the ski program. We also have that to flex on. I mean, I think we know that. I don't know if it would solve the problem if we get there. Like if a whole bunch of funding disappeared on us, we have probably other problems too. You know, this may be close our eyes, and I mean, we're not closing our eyes, but having faith that things will work out in the end down the road.
Yeah. Scott?
I didn't have a lot to add other than I was hoping that Ed would put that grid up right there that shows what we were working on. Is that the 2.67%? change and the 4.6 cents. Yeah, I was not recalling that, but thank you, Ed. And I think our conversation is, I agree with everyone. I think we've come to a good spot.
Sarah?
I feel what you're saying, Nikki, and I think that it just feels like this year there's so much that's sort of up in the air, and that the legislature could help us out and make the situation a lot better. I think that possibility is very much out there, and so I'm comfortable with where we are. But I remember what you, Nikki, said, I think 3 or 4 years ago, about that we at some point we're going to have to face up to our numbers, and I do think that in the next 3 or 4 years there's going to come a moment where we just can't sustain the two teachers per class if the numbers don't start getting better, and I think we maybe need to be looking at long-term planning to address that. I absolutely, this year and probably next year too, I absolutely think we need to do whatever we can do to keep class sizes small. I think the 5th, 6th grade solution was a great one, and that we need that. But we're looking at some rough numbers, and I think Nikki's absolutely right. We've got to just keep that in mind.
I'm going to turn on my mic when I talk. So I think given everything that everybody said, I think I like the 2.67% increase. I like 4.6 penny change. I think these are reasonable. I think I can present them knowing that everything I prepare to present will change before I actually present it. So what is our final number, Ed? Okay, so we have 9,581,349. Do we have to vote on pennies, or are we rounding? I guess we're rounding. Okay.
There are no pennies.
Okay, no pennies. Great. So given where we are, is somebody ready to make a motion? I hear silence. Are we not ready to make a motion?
Yeah, so the motion would be to approve an expenditure budget for FY 22-23 in the amount of $9,581,349, resulting in a projected tax increase of what is it, Ed? 0.045 cents or something like that. 0.0464 cents. I'll do the motion in the minutes. Somebody just needs to make.
I make the motion of what David said. Of the
David, it's
for
4.64 cents.
4.64 cents. Okay, got it.
4.64 cents.
Got it.
Okay, so Beth made a motion. Colleen's mic stopped working. Okay. Ed, can you just go up again? The increase in our budget was 6%. Okay, I was thinking the increase was 3%. Okay, so that's a 6% increase in our budget. Okay. Colleen will be right back. I'm not going to change that number. I'm just thinking. To help me think, are we in year 2 of ESSER, or are we in year 1? We're in year 2. So next year, this budget that we're looking at right now is the last year that we have the ESSER money to help offset.
September 30th, 2024, Nikki. Sorry.
So 2024.
Yeah, so it will cover fiscal year 22, fiscal year 23,
And 24.
and fiscal year 24.
And
Yeah.
fiscal year, we're in fiscal year 22.
Right. Because
So-
fiscal year 24 ends June 30th, 24, but then the funds can be spent up to September 30th, 2024.
Okay. So
Fiscal year 24. Fiscal year 24 ends in June of 2024. You
Right.
just said that the money goes through September of 2024.
It does.
Okay, so that means that the first 3 months, so July, August, and September, are in fiscal year 25.
Right. So we could possibly expense funds in those 3 months. That probably is not going to happen.
Okay. To reiterate, 23. No, we get it till 24. Next year is year 2. Okay, next year is year 2. This year is year 1. We did not have ESSER last year.
Well, you had something else, but not ESSA, right?
Thank you. I just am trying to wrap my head around. So we have this year, and then we have 2 more years of recovery.
Correct.
Okay. And then we have to do a lot of work. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a motion on the table from Beth.
Do we have a second?
We do not yet. I think Sarah's seconding.
I'll second.
Okay.
Sarah seconds. Okay.
Dr. Held previously, so are we ready for a vote?
Yeah, are we ready for a vote? We've had a lot of discussion. Yep. Okay. See people. Colleen's back. Okay. Okay. Let's do a vote. So we have to do this by roll call, and Scott, you are the one at the top of the screen right now.
Okay, aye.
Scott says aye. Sarah, you're next to him.
Aye.
Sarah says aye. Beth?
Aye.
Beth is there. Colleen?
Aye.
And Nikki, aye. Okay, so we have a budget. Congratulations, Christine and Ed. I know you guys worked your butts off. Yay. Okay. And I feel really good about it. There's always so much uncertainty in the future, but I think we're doing the right thing for our kids. Okay. So now we need to get a number for the capital reserve. Ed, do you have a number? Somebody's typing.
So if you're going to fund those 2 projects, it would be 39.8.
Okay, 39.
Right.
Okay. Okay, and that's for 4 sinks or 8 sinks?
That's for 4 sinks.
4 sinks. Okay,
Were there 8 sinks?
there are
Yes.
8.
Is it twice that for 8 sinks?
Yeah.
It's $3,700 per sink.
So Ed, the number you just gave them, does that include the cafeteria updates?
Yeah, so there's $25,000 in there for service lines.
Okay. So do you guys want to stick
This
with?
is it right here.
Okay, great. Okay, so 14.8 for,
This is equal to 3,700 times 4.
yep.
So if you wanted to go to 8,
Christine, do you want to text Jim and see what he thinks?
Yes, I'll call him right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he would prepare. I think he would prefer to do both, to do them all.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. I'm just wondering if there's efficiencies of scale to just get it done.
I would prefer
Especially-
to do them all.
Yeah, especially if we're funding it this way. Sarah, do you still have your hand raised on purpose? I really wish we were all in person doing this. This is killing me to do it remotely.
I don't. Every time I turn on my cell phone, there's another positive case.
Oh God, Colleen, I'm glad you're remote.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
So the total with everything would be 54,600.
okay. So we're
So
waiting to hear from Jim.
Yeah, so let me, so the motion will read like this, right? Somebody will make a motion to ask the voters of the town of Heartland to approve capital improvements in the amount of $54,600 for updated water lines to the sinks of $29,600 and cafeteria service line updates in the amount of $25,000. If you're going to do it all.
Okay. Well, we could do the homework of doing that voting, and then we can go back and undo the vote if Jim says no, although Christine's back now.
Yeah, he'll answer his phone too.
Yeah, it was, we were having some connectivity issues. Surprise. He said all 8 would be better.
Okay, let's
Just get it done. Yep.
get it done. Okay.
Okay.
Anybody want to make a motion? Like David read.
I move
Colleen?
to accept the motion as written.
I'll
Right.
second that.
Okay. So we got
Scott, you
Colleen and
seconded it?
Scott. Yeah, David, are you still taking notes on that kind of stuff?
I am. I got it
Awesome.
all.
Thank you very much.
David.
Okay.
We're going to take turns though. My turn's next tonight.
I can do it next. I think I'm supposed to do it.
Yeah, you did it last time, Colleen. That's good. Maybe you and I will switch it on and off.
Okay.
Okay. So I think we've done our work, guys.
Yeah, we just need a vote now on that. Roll
All
call.
right, we need to vote. Roll call. Okay. I'm going to go back through the line. So Scott, you're first.
Yes.
Okay. Sarah.
Yes, aye.
Nope. Beth.
Aye.
Colleen.
Yes.
And Nikki, aye. Okay, so that was unanimous again. Okay, so I think we did the work that needed to happen today. I had a quick question, and it was moving on to a different topic, or not really on the agenda, but kind of. I just want to have an understanding for us and for anybody listening. What happens next? So we have all of the, as far as COVID goes, we have all of the COVID protocols and testing, but at what point, so what happens if 50% of our student population is home? Like what are the thresholds? And
It's more the staffing. I think the
Yeah.
staffing will go before the kids.
this is, yep, that's right. So I guess I just,
I think it's a great question, Nikki, and it really is, Beth. You're right. It is about staffing, but it is also around that 50% threshold, because right now we have no authority to count that as a school day if we drop below 50%, and we have no authority from the state to go remote right now and count that as a school day. So both of those things are really screwing us up. My understanding is the legislature, as early as this week, they're going to be remote, by the way, for the first 18 days of the session. At least that's the plan now. But I've been told by Elizabeth, who is in the know at the legislative level, that there's going to be a move to give lots of authority back to local boards around remote instruction, counting school days that don't get waived, maybe the number of school days in a school year. If you remember, last year we only had to go 170 and not 175. And also, relief around having completely remote school board meetings like we're doing tonight, because it's just getting, too crazy out there right now. And I don't think it'll be a forever approval, but maybe at least through town meeting time and just get us through the next couple of months. That's what Elizabeth tells me. In the meantime, I think we, much like Springfield had to do twice, and I know other districts have had to do it, I think we'll roll the dice. If we get under 50%, we're going to probably have to close schools and shut down. If we can't staff a building, and our staff, and I look at Christine and Lindsay and Ann, and I don't know if I thought we had another staff member on here for a while, but the staff is doing heroic work to keep the schools open. I mean, that's the bottom line. And they're covering classes, they're covering on their prep periods, and we try to throw small stipends at them for doing that, but it means that some of them are working, including all employees are working from the time they get there till the time they leave at 3:15 or 3:30. It's taxing and exhausting, but I think we'll try to count on the staff to keep doing that if they can. But if we get to a point where we just can't do it, and I'll keep what I've been doing with the board chairs, Nikki, I'll just keep you posted. And then if you want to inform the rest of the board, I think that's fine. But what I do is I communicate directly with the 4 board chairs, Nikki, Amy. Matter of fact, we did some communicating over the holidays around whether or not we should even open this week. And the consensus was, let's give it a shot, see what happens. Because we have no authority to do anything differently. So I think we'll just take it one day at a time. Schools have been open Monday and Tuesday, right? We were one of the few that waited till Wednesday. I haven't heard, I know Colleen's cell phone is lighting up, but I haven't heard what's going on around the state. I know that absenteeism has been high from what I understand. It's getting really bad in Chittenden County. But I guess we'll just take it one day at a time. Christine, I don't know if you wanted to add to that or not.
No, I think that's what we've been doing. And when we get to that critical point, we're going to have to make a decision. But again, the staff has been incredibly flexible and helpful, and just remain with a kind of what can we do to help attitude, which is wonderful. And on top of being short-staffed and having pretty much, I don't know, one constant sub. That's about all we get. No matter how many absences we have one sub usually, and we've been making it work. So I hope we can continue to make it work, and we will as long as we can.
Yeah.
So, I think staffing is probably my bigger concern in terms of, absences. And we have some that are sick right now. So we'll see how this week goes.
But we will keep you posted for sure.
Yeah.
And many of you are parents, so you'll be the first. You'll be the first to know. Sometimes I have to CC Scott because Scott doesn't have kids in school anymore, so he doesn't get all that joyous email.
Yeah.
We'll just keep people updated.
I think the good news, at least I'm going to take this as good news, is I think the next 6 weeks is going to be a hell of a ride, and then hopefully.
Yeah, we get February break then.
Well, and then hopefully we start to see the other end of this.
Yeah.
My fingers are
crossed. We had somebody today tell us, and I think this is important for us to realize, that we're going to eventually have to shift from case count to hospitalizations, because case count is not a good picture of how sick our society is, essentially, because we don't keep track of flu case counts or pneumonia case counts or any of those other case counts. And what we do keep track of is if they get to the point where hospitalizations are on the increase and ICU beds are starting to fill up. So I think we've got to move this focus eventually, because as Dave Melnick, our trauma coordinator, told us today, nobody is going to come out and declare the pandemic over. It's just not like the Iraqi war, and that was a huge mistake when that was declared over, right? I mean, so it's not going to happen. I mean, we're going to just ease into a place where we learn how to mitigate this and moderate it and protect ourselves and get vaccinated and and I'm hearing now, people probably know better than me, but lots of new medications are being developed that help people in the early stages. If you can get diagnosed, within the first 5 days, then, they got all kinds of pills you can take. So, I mean, thank God we've got good science. What I really worry more about, and this will be the last thing I say because it's going to be totally political, but what I worry about is just the continued division in this country. That's scary. To me, that's more scary than the pandemic. I mean, I think we can deal with a pandemic. We cannot deal with a country this divided, and we're seeing it over and over and over again. That scares me.
One question I got from somebody, and I suppose I'm sort of wondering about this myself. If parents start to be concerned about spread in a class, and they say, I'm going to keep my kid home for the next 3 days, or the next week, or, how is that now handled? I know earlier in the pandemic, there was more sort of leeway with attendance and excused and unexcused absences, but how would that be handled now?
We're pretty flexible, Sarah.
Yeah, okay.
Honestly, we just call it excused, and
try to get work.
we know the kids that we're really worried about with truancy.
Yeah,
and those kids are on our radar, but we're pretty flexible in that case. So I don't want any parents worrying about that. We get it. So I just had a question in terms of when we make a decision whether we're in person or remote for our budget meeting and our I don't know if the select board has made a decision about March meeting yet.
That's a great question.
Just when we make that decision. So I don't know, Nikki, you look like you might have some. No, okay.
Do you know, Nikki? No.
I don't know anything.
Okay.
I'm leaning on Scott, which you can't tell right now.
Yeah, I know the weather.
I'm leaning on Scott for some inside knowledge, but I haven't heard anything yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
I will say this. I was going to say the Weathersfield Select Board last night voted to go virtually for town meeting. Now, whether or not they've got the statutory authority to do that, who knows? But at least that's their intent, is to be virtual again this year. So it might be time to get a hold of Dave. I don't know whether that should be me or Nikki or Christine, and just see what that select board is thinking in Heartland. And I'm certainly going to talk to them on a Scotney board too, to see what they want to push for. Yeah,
I'm happy to reach out to Dave if you want, and just see where they're at.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to do that too. I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
They need to keep us in the loop, but
yeah.
Okay, well, I'm. Oh, Scott, you got your hand up.
Yes, please. I was wondering more about that 50% threshold. The threshold of 50% students in this. That's not something I've heard about before, and it just, our community back 2 school years ago, 2 seasons ago, we had a lot of interest in going back to in-person school throughout the surveys that Angie submitted to our community. So it just seems arbitrary that if you were at 40% kids out, but if you went a few more points that you'd shut down the operations. How's that work, David?
Yeah. So that's actually part of the state standard, essentially, for attendance. It's in the law that you have to be in session at least more than 50% of your students. So 51% of your students have to be in session for it to be counted as a legal school day. And we haven't dropped below that yet in Heartland. Weathersfield had one day when they were at like 49.5. Now, what the state board can do, like they did during the last pandemic, the state board can waive those days, right? There's a process by which we can apply to the state commissioner or the state secretary, as called now, and we can ask for a waiver saying that we just did not have the capacity for student attendance on this day due to COVID. And last year they did a standard waiver for everybody for up to 5 days, and it worked pretty well. I guess we'll just have to see what happens. I think we've had some close calls, but not at Heartland. I mean, you had quite a few kids out.
Yeah, I think we had during when we were right after Thanksgiving, I think our largest day was, I think we had 79 kids out. I think that was the number.
Yeah, so that's getting in that 60%,
Yeah.
range.
So
And believe it or not, Scott, I'm sure you know this too, and not to bring up bad news, but we also had a lot of kids out during that TikTok foolishness, right? I mean, we had a lot of parents just kept kids home, and the attendance rate we were nervous about that day because we didn't want to drop under 50%, and luckily we didn't. But
I did not know about that. But what I was getting at was, I mean, the service that the school district provides to families is great, and the convenience. And so what I'm asking is, legally, does the school have to close its doors if it gets down to 55% of the children not showing up?
yeah, because it would take an awful lot of emergency meetings, but contractually, right, our teachers are obligated to work 100 and whatever number of days, 175 student days. So if one day can't count, then we can't make them work and then do another day at the end. Or, I mean, we can only have them work during legal school days. And so that's the problem. The problem is the service that would be rendered by teachers to 48% of the population. And then they'd know that might not count. And that, Weathersfield rolled the dice, and the teachers were willing to come in and risk it. And I'm hoping we can get that day waived, and I think we probably will, but that's why I think the legislature is going to take this up in the first week or so here. Because right now it's very, very gray and confusing. And I know the superintendents around the state have just felt like that's one of the reasons this year is worse than last year, because we had options last year that we don't have this year, and we're kind of making it up on the fly, and that's really hard. Our teachers know how to go remote, and they don't think it's the best way to go, but they do know how to go remote. The problem this year, from a state perspective and a political perspective, is you don't have as many parents home anymore. Everybody's back to work. So that becomes a liability. And it's this tension between school as childcare and school as school. And it's a real tension that I think the legislature is going to try to deal with it, and we'll see. I mean, I'm putting a lot of faith in what Elizabeth told me, but we'll see.
Thank you. That helps a lot. Thank you.
Nice Christmas tree, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
And Scott still has it up because he knows that Christmas season does not end until this Sunday, which is the feast of the baptism of the Lord. I'm just saying that. I'm not trying to proselytize, but that's the way it goes. Don't take that down, Scott, for another week.
Okay.
Does it count if it's just been taken in half and put on the porch?
Yeah, that's okay. If you got it on the porch, probably just put a candle next to it, or do whatever you got to do.
Out for the birds doesn't count.
No, maybe. I don't think so. No.
I fed ours to our neighbors' alpacas.
Depends on how many ornaments you missed.
How many ornaments you missed? Yeah. Oh, my
The
wife.
alpacas looked hungry. I decided it was a good use.
I fondly call my wife Buddy the Elf, and if I ever tried to touch that tree before the right day, I'd be in big, big trouble. It's got to stay lit, and it's got to stay up. So that's the way it goes.
Awesome. Well, I think we did a lot of good work today, guys.
When's the next meeting, Nikki? Do we want
Oh, right. We need to set the next meeting.
Yeah, and tonight, I mean, in the past half a year, there have been a number of executive sessions, hasn't it? And some questions. It seems like we haven't resolved some questions about tuition, and there's at least one other executive session item that I remember from just a month ago. Are we going to do that tonight, or?
I wasn't planning on it, but we are done early.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't, I mean, we can certainly have an executive session, but thanks, Ann, for coming. But I don't have any specific updates
I
unless
do have an update.
on the tuition issue.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we could have a quick executive session.
Yeah.
And
We have to set the next meeting in the agenda first, though. So I have
February 1st.
February 1st.
is that what we got?
February 1st, yeah.
Okay.
And it's the first day of Black History Month and the Lunar New Year, according to my phone. So we'll go with Tuesday, February 1st. I don't know about you guys, but it's hard for me to remember that it's the first Tuesday when it is the first. So let's hope we all pull this together. And then we need an agenda. So Christine and I need to prepare a presentation to the town. And along those same lines, I'm going to have to create a write-up for the town report that I have previously just circulated to all of you guys for a quick look. Make sure that you agree with my assessment of the year. So you'll see that, but I'll need that all done before the next meeting. So we have our town presentation.
I'm sure there'll be some COVID stuff we'll probably need to discuss,
Yes.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
I don't know if, like, in the past we were doing, like, Angie was doing those, like, staffing surveys of stress level and how they were feeling and that kind of stuff. So I don't know if she'd be willing to do, I'm just really curious. I mean, they seem to be working so hard, and I know everyone just seems so back, it's like at maximum stress level again. And if there's anything we can do, so I don't know if it's worth putting it on.
Yeah, I think we haven't heard from Angie or well, we've been doing probably more at the SU level, but I know that Katie with special ed and Angie with some of the ESSER and recovery updates. I mean, we could, they try to be at every meeting. Katie couldn't be here tonight, but we could do something with one of those next time. So
I will, something that's been on my mind, and Christine and David are both aware of this. So I read a new book that I'm completely blanking on the name on right now. But it talks about kids who misbehave in school because they can't figure out how to do the work in school. So they're essentially just traumatized by the act of being in school. And I know that I myself have one of those children. And I think there are other board members that have those children. And so some of the things, like, part of me wants to do kind of a deep dive of, and I'm not asking Lindsay to do this or Christine, because I know that things are too stressful, but in the bigger picture, I want to do a deep dive of our behavioral data and really match our behavioral data to our IEPs. Thank you, Lindsay. For those of us that blank. So I want to do a really deep dive to match our behavioral data with our IEPs and really try to get an understanding of, are these kids shutting down because they can't access their schooling and because they can't do the work that they're being asked to do, or are they actually behavioral problems? Like, are we missing things that we should be catching up on? And this, it comes from another conversation with another parent that I had today whose son is also shutting down because of an IEP conflict. Like it just the work, he can't do the work that his IEP expects him to do. And so that causes shutdowns and then behaviors. And so I feel like I just want to take a deeper look at really what is, I think Christine probably knows off the top of her head the student. But
well, and I think that we've done this. I mean, I remember Brittany doing this, and it's pretty staggering data that kids on IEPs,
have, but
they show up. Yeah, they show up in the behavior data, right, as incidents.
It didn't.
More
she
so.
didn't look.
Yeah,
she did a broad look of this kid has an IEP, and they show up in the behavioral data.
Yes.
But what I want to look at is this kid has an IEP, and these are the behaviors that they're showing.
Specific behaviors. Okay.
Yeah, because those are in the book, they describe the specific behaviors that are indicative of a kid that's not accessing their education.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I don't want to be treating those kids as behavioral problems.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that we are. I think we need to find those kids desperately. And I personally feel like if we can find those kids and if we can get those kids to succeed, then our behaviors may plummet. And so it may benefit everybody if we can. So that's a broader picture. I mean, I guess we should just maybe put this.
Well, we'll put it on the to-do list. It might not get done by February 1st, but certainly something.
Yeah, we can put it on the agenda, but not expect results.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And you can
I mean, I think it's important, and I'm still waiting for my copy of the book to come. Did yours come in, David? You ordered copies as well.
Yeah, I think they have, but I was just writing to Lori. I didn't check today, so
okay.
But I'm sure they did. I think we ordered either 5.
You ordered 5, and if they come in, I'd love to snag one and just read it until mine gets here.
Did you order? Did you order one? Okay.
I ordered 1. Yeah.
Maybe I'll do a book report for the next meeting.
Oh, that'd be great.
Okay. I'll do a book report and communicate more clearly why this is bugging me. Okay. So
can I just say too, I mean, I think you're really focusing on the kids that are already on IEPs and reflecting on this. And I think if we can identify those actions happening before IEPs have to be put into place, because not all these things may need IEPs, that's like huge. Like, and that's what we're dealing with right now in our family. Like how, like just to have to go through the whole IEP process and evaluation process is traumatizing. It's difficult. So it's like, how can we make it so we're identifying this process even before, and then be able to take steps if need be, but then also like nip it in the bud if we can, so we don't have to be referring kids for IEPs and things. Yeah. Because then it also gets more expensive, to say the least.
Yeah. Thank you, Beth. Colleen? Your mic isn't working again.
What would be the treatment? I mean, or what would we do if we identified kids that fell into this?
So in my book report, I'll talk about it.
I mean, and we can talk about it then, but
no,
if we identify kids and then we don't do anything.
Right. So
not that I'm saying that that's what we would do, but
I think we have in the country, we have a class of students that have never felt successful in school. And until they feel successful in school, they can't be successful in school. And so I feel like we need to identify those kids and then take a step back and work to find ways that those kids can succeed. And I think the first step is identifying them. Like, where are the kids that are really falling down, that look like behavior problems, and how? And so I don't know what the answers are. So I think that we should just talk about it more.
Well, some of the answers are coming at it from the lens of trauma transformed school, right? And using collaborative problem solving and just recognizing that when a kid shuts down, it doesn't mean they're being disrespectful.
Right.
Or if a kid just walks out of the room, I mean, that's a stress, that could be a stress behavior, right? And it's educating the staff on what those behaviors look like and what they're masking, really. And if you approach it with that lens every time, then you're going to get to the bottom of it and figure it out in a more therapeutic way. But
or just get better results,
or just and it's a lot of I find and teachers don't do anything intentionally to hurt any child, right? But when a kid is misbehaving, sometimes they escalate a little bit because they don't know how to handle it, and that makes it even worse in many occasions. But the system is shifting. I mean, it's a slow process, because school is very different than when the teachers were students in school, right? It was very much you sit and you conform, and you do what you're supposed to, or you get in trouble, right? School's not like that anymore, and we don't want it to be like that. But if you grew up in that system, and a child then responds in a way that looks disrespectful, you oftentimes revert back to what you know as a response. So it's shifting that. So we're working on it, but
yeah. And Christine, I mean, I have to comment. I mean, our experience, has been really positive. I think the teachers we're working with right now is hugely experienced with that. And I think it's so much what we're kind of stuck on. It's like, it's time in the day, that these teachers are, how many kids are doing this behavior in a classroom that the teachers are trying to be so thoughtful and their reactions to, and they are, but it's like, oh my gosh, then they have another 20 kids to deal with. And that's just, I can't, I
think that's why I asked about the goal. Like, is there a model that we can switch to that doesn't cripple our labor force, like the time that you have on the floor? And
well, it often stops your teaching. If you're going to deal with it in the right way, you have to give that child or those children attention, which takes you away from teaching sometimes, which happens frequently
all day long.
Not gonna lie.
Yeah. Sure.
And we have systems in place that where there's help, but those systems get strained as well. So yeah.
But engaging ADHD, that's my ADHD, I can't remember the letters. Kid that seems like a specialized, going to be some kind of specialized method. I'll be interested to hear the conversation around that.
Yeah.
So let's put it on the agenda.
Identify somebody and help them feel successful. I still don't feel successful.
We'll put it on the agenda as I'll do a book report first, and then you guys don't have to do anything. People can get caught up to where I am in my thought process on this. And I think that's plenty. So we have a town presentation, COVID, and then an IEPs versus behaviors book report.
So Nikki, do you I mean, David mentioned Katie and Angie, but unless there's a specific report you want from them, I would say, hold off.
Well, I'm pretty sure that both of them would want to be there for the book report. So, I think, so we'll invite them.
Okay.
They don't have to have anything ready.
And I want to be clear, like I'm more excited because this book helped my family a lot, and I can see a lot of other kids in it. And I don't have any answers. I guess I have an agenda in that I think that we really need to sit down and bring attention to these.
But I think that'll be great, Nikki. And I think as many of us, trying to read that book, Nowhere to Hide, I think was the name of the book. And so we ordered them. And then, I think though, one of the things we're going to find, and I think you'll find this coming out of your book report as well, because we've had these conversations, some of this is a little bit labor intensive. So again, we just had this discussion, right, about what we're trying to do. But I think, this is where I think the community and the public are just going to have to understand that what we're trying to do today in this inclusive environment is it's just going to be costly and labor intensive. There's training, development work that needs to go on. I think smaller class sizes are critical when you're doing this kind of work. Specialized classes, ways you switch kids around. I mean, it's all that stuff. So I think it'll be fun to have the conversation. And I hope it leads to something even, my bias always is at the SU level, because we have a better capacity at the SU level to sometimes to deal, because we've got that better base of resources as we look at this. And I bet you it's not just a Heartland issue. I'm sure it's not.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So we have an agenda. David, did you get it?
I did.
Okay, great. Okay, so we're going to move into we're good. Okay, we need to vote to move into executive session to talk about a student tuition issue. And there was one other issue that I'm completely blanking on. So if somebody could fill me in on the language of why it's an executive session.
So who wants to move? Scott, you want to move?
I'll move.
Is there a second? Okay. Is that the second?
Seconded?
Yeah. Beth did.
That's seconded.
Yep.
Okay. And then
We need to stop recording.
I will stop recording. Let me just finish that part of the minutes. And I'll stop recording.
Do we all vote?
Oh, I
I said 5-0, so I hope you did.